The focus of this paper is on improving naturalness and clarity in Bible translation by making a digital audio recording of written text using Hear This and comparing the audio and the written text. There are many benefits of doing this fairly early in the process, rather than near the end or after the text has been finalized. I was driving in the Los Angeles area a few months ago. Commiserative groans are appropriate here. It was a Saturday morning and traffic was flowing smoothly and very fast. Distance between cars was small, much less than desirable. Suddenly, a motorcycle smoothly swerved in front of me and just as quickly passed a car in the left lane, swerved in front of it, and then the rest of the pack of young, daring riders appeared with the same smooth, daring weaving, working their way ahead in the heavy traffic. It was like a well-played video game. Within a minute, they were out of sight on their adrenaline rush Saturday ride. That kind of riding is only possible because of predictability, consistent speed and distance, dry surface, signals, and the like. Language, like Saturday morning LA traffic, is predictable as well. We expect certain patterns of clear, accurate, and natural language, whether written or spoken. And because of that, we can use certain tests to highlight aberrations in translations of languages. Translation by nature is like pounding square pegs into round holes. Constraints of different grammars, lexicons, and cultures require us to take the normally square peg of our target language and shape it into sometimes unnatural ways to conform the meaning to the round hole of the source language. We shave off a little bit of a corner here by bending a grammatical rule just a bit, or we sand off a little corner there by creating a new lexical term or by borrowing one, and eventually we get that peg to fit. But in all of our carpentry, after working so long, or wording so long, we sometimes lose sight of what the natural shape of our target language is. And our translation carpentry, at least in our minds, seems like, yeah, this is good, it works. And so, to keep ourselves honest, we do testing with our translations. The predictable patterns of natural language can show up aberrations in translation when a mother tongue speaker does a read through, especially someone who is new to the text, a fresh reader. What they read orally isn't always exactly what is written. As an example, I'd like to share this meme that was going around the internet in 2003. Just read through it quickly. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters are in a word. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. The rest can be a total mess and you can still read it without a problem. Did you spot an error or two? But were you able to read it? You were able to read it because language is predictable. It should sound a certain way. Our minds are able to fix errors. By the way, the info in the meme is not real, even though there is some truth in it. There is no study by Cambridge University. However, Matt Davis from the real Cambridge shed some light on this in an article, which you can find in the references. These kinds of memes are so popular now, they have a name, typoglycemia. Typoglycemia can refer to the phenomenon in which words can be read despite being jumbles, or it can refer to the ability to read such text. Our Cambridge paragraph and the typoglycemia definition are examples of written text, which is more or less unconsciously corrected when read either silently or orally. When we apply this unconscious correction to the patterns and predictability of language, in concert with informational context, our minds can actually highlight where our written language is unnatural or unclear by noting where spoken language differs from written text when it is read aloud. Someone might ask, how or why does recording audio actually highlight errors? As we know, language is predictable, so as a person is reading aloud, With visual input, with oral production, and immediate oral feedback, you are getting a multi-level sensory experience. Your mind is already thinking faster than you can speak, and it expects certain patterns or certain lexical items based on a lifetime of experiences. So, what you see on the page and what your mind processes and puts into your mouth and feeds back to your ears may not be exactly what the text says. If the mind perceives the overall intention of the text, the brain may produce sounds in the mouth that naturally express the concepts even better than the written text, which is sometimes forced due to other translation constraints. On the other hand, if the mind does not understand the intention of the text, it may produce natural and clear speech that does not match up with the text or the intended meaning of the text. In either case, you have the opportunity to explore further and try and understand why you said what you did and if the place in the translation needs revision or not. As Bible translators, we have known for a long time about oral reading as a way to test translations. Catherine Barnwell gives some great ways to test a translation by reading it aloud, both in person and on a recording. When speech is carefully compared to written text, differences can highlight where we have been shaving off those corners of our target language. For many situations, read aloud testing in person produces very good results. In others, we might find that the reading fluency of our community is not high enough to make good use of the read aloud test in person. But we can improve this testing process by using digital recording. I am so grateful for the teams who have been working on technological innovations and improvements that make this kind of audio testing so much easier now than even just a few years ago. The software product in particular that I want to highlight is called Hear This. Recording the written translation using Hear This can help us find those elusive places in our translation that might need revision, even when we have done other testing, like reading aloud to yourself, to another person, or to a group. When our team translated the North Tana New Testament of Vanuatu, we followed the recommended 10 steps of translation, just the way we learned in school. In fact, we added a few more steps to make it even more accurate, clear, and natural. As soon as the North Tana New Testament was dedicated, we began working on the nearby White Sands New Testament, a sister language. Using the North Tana as a source text, we carefully began adapting and translating into White Sands. We adjusted the places where the North Tana could have been translated better, and we made lexical and grammatical changes as required by the new language. Our plan was to get the translation just right, get it typeset, and then do the audio recording while it was being printed. We would have a recording that was word perfect and matched the printed text exactly. So that's what we set out to do. When the White Sands New Testament went to the printer, our team was feeling really good about the translation. We knew that no translation is perfect, but we felt like this one was communicating really well, and we were ready to settle into recording now. But we were in for a little surprise. We rented a house in a little town where there was mains power, brought in 4 laptops, headsets, a piece of mattress behind each computer to deaden the echo. We made a schedule of readers, 4 at a time in different rooms. We used Hear This for recording. This program is a lifesaver. It is so easy to use. Now, this is a big plus for mother tongue translator projects or projects where people have less technical experience. We had people who had never touched a computer before learn how to use Hear This in just a few minutes. There are only 4 buttons that a reader needs to learn. For record, spacebar. Playback, tab. Go ahead to the next verse, right arrow. Go back to the last verse, left arrow. One phrase or sentence at a time appears on the screen with the option of a line of context before and after the target text. The reader is on his own, working by himself. Record, playback, re-record if needed. Move on. When he or she finished a few chapters, we would copy them onto a USB drive and the reader would continue recording. A clever person today might actually use a network drive to make this even easier. Then the checker, in this case my wife or myself, would put the recording onto their computer and hear this and listen for quality. We noted any verses that were not read exactly like the text or were poor sound quality, including things like chickens and children in the background. If a checker needs to listen to a phrase again, even several times, it's so easy. Tab, plays back. Tab again, play back. Ad infinitum, so easy. After the next break for that reader, the error list for the previous chapter was handed them as they navigated to the verse and the block where the error was, and then they re-recorded. Very easy. Once that was complete, the checker would again listen for quality, only for the corrected verses. It's very easy to navigate to these revisions. If the block was read correctly, all was well. But here was the surprise that maybe should not have been a surprise. The recording process itself highlighted places in the text that required revision because they were not clear or natural, just like Katie had predicted. After all our hard work translating and checking, and even doing a read through, we still needed improvements. There were times when the reader would incorrectly read a block 3 separate times, and at that point we would stop and we would talk about the word or phrase with the recordist. Sometimes the error was in decoding. He just read a word incorrectly. When he reread it carefully and it made sense, he re-recorded, and all was well. At other times, there was a problem with the translation we needed to explore. It was either unnatural or unclear, and it caused typoglycemia, with the reader making subconscious correction to what was in the text. Sometimes he misread a word or substituted another word for it because it was similar, something that made sense for him in the context. Or he might add a morpheme that was not there, indicating that the translation needed a tweak, or something like a verb tense or a pronoun number marker was off. Or he might choose a different morpheme or word that made more sense, indicating faulty grammar, or perhaps a missing discourse feature. Or he might choose a different morpheme or word that did not make sense, but was a word he knew. Well, you have to say something, right? That must be what it says, even though I don't get it. Or perhaps he just stumbled on a word or phrase or read it very woodenly, indicating he was unfamiliar with the word or phrase. Now, at that point, we sent the text back to the translation team for revision. But wait, we had already sent the final text to the printer. In the end, we decided to revise the translation, put the revision in the audio, and then make notes for the next printed revision, whenever that would be. Our goal of a perfect match of audio and text was not to be. And that brings us to the point of this paper. If an audio recording could highlight places where a translation could be improved, and it can be done with minimal supervision and so simply with hear this, why wait until late in the game to do audio recording? Why not do this early in the process, as Katie has suggested? This is what I'm advocating. Make an initial audio recording using Hear This after the team has what they feel is a good draft, but before the community check and before the consultant check. On the 10 steps of translation, this would be at the end of step 4, team check. So you could call it 4B. Why record at 4B and not just a read through? In my experience, most of our significant revisions came very early on with the translation team. At that point, the text was really quite good. But the audio recording process illuminated possible problem areas that the read-through missed. And later and later community testing will further fine tune things, but we want it to be really pretty good before the community test. Now, in addition to the improved quality of the translation in terms of naturalness and clarity, there are some extra benefits to doing a recording at this stage. 1. Community checking and SE, scripture engagement. The recording itself can be used for community checking. Once needed revisions have been brought to light by the recording process and the written text adjusted, the recording itself is easily adjusted using Hear This. And once those corrections are made in the audio, all of our audio tools for scripture distribution can be put into play for the purpose of community checking. Hear This outputs to multiple audio formats. Then we can use Mega Voice players or similar scripture app builder with expiration dates on phones, Scripture Forge, local FM radio, Bible studies, etc., etc. Those doing community checking can rely on the recording to give a good reading of the text, even if the community checker is not a very fluent reader themselves. They can play the audio and have people respond to what they hear. Translation checking through audio and written text is a great scripture engagement activity. 2. Improve literacy skills. The readers doing the recording improve their own reading skills. We did not plan for this to happen, but it was hard to miss noticing during the recording process. A person will read the text several times before recording and several times when playing it back, carefully listening while reading the written text. So they're doing focused reading practice multiple times, 4, 8, 10 times over the same phrase without even knowing they've done reading practice. It's fun, and they become better readers in the process. 3. Higher quality recording. With local mother tongue readers setting the reading quality standards by self-assessment of each verse or phrase, the quality of recording could turn out higher than if reading assessment is done only by an expat who will most likely have a lower fluency in the target language than a mother tongue reader. The readers are self-correcting when doing the recording. In my experience, their standards were much higher than my own. I remember monitoring one session as it was being recorded. I heard a verse read and thought to myself, that was pretty good. He should go on. But no, after he listened, he thought it was not just right yet. He re-recorded several times until he was satisfied that it was just right. Another reader had rudimentary reading skills, but really wanted to take part in the recording. We gave him Stephen's speech in Acts 7. He worked on it for a whole week, but became a better reader and gave us a great recording. My investment was about 10 minutes of training on Hear This and a few minutes to check his final recording. Number 4, better Bible understanding. The readers will be increasing their own understanding of Scripture as they go through the recording multiple times, as noted above. As they are trying to get the sound right, they're encouraged to think through the meaning of the text they're reading. It's like a mini Bible study, and even better, because we often had them read whole books. And number 5, a draft can become a final recording. If further revisions brought out by community and consultant checking are minimal, the audio recording can easily be adjusted and used as the final recording if the sound quality was sufficient. Now, in what context would audio recording be especially beneficial? I surmise that the greatest beneficiaries will be Bible translation projects using written text, especially when literacy fluency is low and developing. This would include much of the Pacific, like Vanuatu, where we worked, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, all to varying degrees, and countries with similar literacy rates would be similar. Of course, as we saw from our Cambridge paragraph, even projects with good readers like yourselves will benefit from this process. Now, what are the requirements? Number 1, you need a written translation in paratext. Number 2, you need Hear This on a laptop or a phone. Number 3, a headset. That's all you need. And the process: 1, translate and revise. Do the recording after the initial drafts and revisions. So at the end of step 4, the team check. 2, record. The local speaker records the written text using Hear This. 3, check. A team member checks for accuracy of the recording, a line at a time, comparing the audio and the text. Are they identical? He can also listen for naturalness and clarity himself, a kind of one-person community check. 4, note the issues. If the audio is not identical to the text, note the chapter, the verse, and the block number. 5, explore the problem. Talk to the recordist. Is it an unknown word, an unusual spelling, an unusual construction, an unnatural rendering? Is it unclear? Then 6, re-record and check. If it's a simple decoding error, the recordist tries that line again. The checker then rechecks. But note the checker does not need to recheck the whole chapter, only to navigate to the line that was re-recorded. And 7, if there does seem to be a need for translation revision, send that line back to the translation team to correct the error. Then re-record and check just that line or that section. Try and use the same recordist. Now, how long does it take to do a test recording like this? Lots of factors here, but for a community like the first one we worked in, literacy for adults was fairly low. Most of our translators had been through government schools through year 6, and their reading speed was about 4 verses per minute. Based on this reading rate, an actual recording of the White Sands New Testament, here's a sample of what you can expect for a recording. An epistle of 100 verses might take between 6 and 20 man-hours. So if several people are working on it, it would take half or a third of that. Your mileage might vary. To compare, an English translation of the New Living New Testament in 1 Timothy, the rate was about 8 verses per minute. So twice as fast as our White Sands translation. So there's quite a bit of variation between languages, but this gives you an idea. So is it worth the time to do this kind of test recording? Absolutely. Give it a go. I encourage you to try on a few hundred verses and see what you think. Setup is really minimal. The whole process of setup and recording would only take a few hours. It would be worth it to give it a try. And let me know how it goes.